Welcome back to another edition of the Michigan Lacrosse Review. We've got Lafayette head coach Patrick Myers talking from Easton, Pennsylvania. And for those of you who don't know, Easton is kind of northeast Pennsylvania. Am I correct?
Yes, you got it.
You've been there 5 years, and you guys have got off to a pretty good start. I mean, I know you're at 4-7, but the Patriot League is a tough league to sort of crack. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but talk a little bit about this season.
Yeah, no, excited about how the season's going. We got a really committed group of guys that, from the time that I got here, recruiting this group of young men and, really trying to figure out the winning formula in the Patriot League. It's definitely taken us some time, but, feel like we've closed a big gap. So it was exciting to obviously be really competitive with Loyola and Army and then get the big win over Colgate. And, I think we play a really tough non-conference schedule, which the goal there is to prepare us to compete in our league, against whatever it is, 4 or 5 top 15 teams at any given time. So, had another battle with Lehigh this past weekend, and our team's goal has been from the beginning to make the Patriot League tournament. So we're excited for this stretch run here in front of us.
You've got a couple guys from Dallas, a couple guys from Texas on your roster.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's an East Coast based roster. Do we understand west of Cleveland how good the Patriot League is?
In terms of you
Just-
don't think people respect the Patriot League?
No, I think I don't think they know much about the Patriot League.
Sure.
I think if they really looked at it and understood the teams that are in it, my point is it doesn't necessarily get this flash that maybe the Big Ten or the ACC gets.
Yeah, no, that's fair. What I
It's a
tell
really
people
good league.
young men when I recruit them is one of the reasons why Lafayette is putting resources into lacrosse is if you win the Patriot League, you're, one of the best teams in the country. You got a shot at winning the national championship. And lacrosse is the only sport at Lafayette where you could say that, right? If you're field hockey or soccer, you're in, the best team in the Patriot League maybe is receiving votes in the top 20. In men's lacrosse, we have 4 or 5 top 15 teams at any given time, a couple top 10 teams. So when you win your conference, you know that you've got a shot to be one of the best teams in the country with Loyola, BU, Army, Navy, Lehigh, you name it. So Bucknell, Colgate, it's a gauntlet for sure.
So I guess what I'm asking is, do you guys think you get the respect you deserve nationally?
I don't think so, but I don't know that that's something that we really focus on. I mean, I think that, those programs, the Big Ten gets a lot of TV time, as does the ACC. And, I think that the Ivy League obviously is one that gets a lot of publicity. And I think, we're a league that is, I believe on the rise and is going to be up there with those other leagues here. As more resources get put into, you see the bottom of our league is really starting to come up. And I think that's where you see the rise of our league.
Lacrosse for you starts in Kennebunk, Maine. We should mention that your older brother, Nick, is the head coach at Ohio State. You have the better playing resume, but where did you pick up a stick? I'm assuming you had to pick up a stick because your older brother played.
Yeah, my stepfather, our stepdad came into our lives when we were young and introduced the game of lacrosse to Nick and I. He was the head coach at Cape Elizabeth in Maine, which is north of Portland. He won, I believe it was 10 straight state championships. We have pictures of Nick and I with the Mohawks and being the water boys on the sideline. So we fell in love with the game at a young age. Our mom ran the club out of our dining room, out of her kitchen. And, we helped, kind of grow the sport in Kennebunk and, in the state of Maine, and something that we're really proud of.
Usually little brothers are better than big brothers. Going to get a chance to learn from that. You spent 4 years with the Boston Cannons. So 2 questions. One, the Boston Cannons are back in the PLL this past year.
Yeah.
So you got to make your heart feel good as an alumni. And who's the better player?
Yeah, I mean, Nick was a heck of a player, went to Springfield College and had an incredible career there. So, we pushed each other. I think Nick just paved the way for probably me to have more of an opportunity to be recognized and seen on the recruiting circuit, honestly. I think he was a heck of a player in his own right. And at the end of the day, like, big brothers, like I said, they paved the way for the younger brother. And he taught me how to compete and how to work hard and how to be a good teammate. So, those are all things that I'm really grateful for.
Was the highway to Columbus for you because your brother was an assistant at the time for Joe Brushy?
No, actually, Nick wasn't an assistant. So Nick didn't come on until after I got got to Ohio State. So Nick was still a junior in college when I was a freshman at Ohio State. I went to Ohio State because they recruited me and they saw me play and they invited me out to a football game and I went and fell in love with it. And I felt like I wanted to get away from home and do something different. And I loved Coach Bresci. And then my junior year, Nick came on as the volunteer and coached me my junior and senior year.
What kind of relationship is that?
Unbelievable, honestly. It was, I think, 2 years that we, look back on and reflect on, and I have such fond memories of. And there was a mutual respect there. All my teammates respected the heck out of him. And it really set the stage for his coaching career. So it was 2 really special years. We broke through, went to the NCAA tournament for the first time in program history. So it was really cool for both of us to be a part of that.
You can't think of very many brothers or siblings. You think of the Powells, obviously, you think of the Gates, but having that kind of opportunity, father and son would be one thing, but brothers is even a more unique relationship because you both played. I think that's
Right.
something that's interesting. What'd you major in at Ohio State?
I was a sports management major, really unique major. Another one of the reasons why I wanted to go there, but you could choose a business track, you could choose a coaching track. So you could actually specialize in coaching. I knew at a young age I wanted to coach. All my parents were divorced when we were young, remarried, all educators, teachers. And so it was kind of just like that education, teaching was in our blood and something that I knew I wanted to do.
Well, teaching is one, but sports management's a whole nother deal because usually sports management, you end up as an athletic director, you end up in some part of the business of sport. But you knew at an early age you wanted to coach. What was the influence?
I think again, my stepdad coaching Nick and I, and watching kind of, how he went about his business, watching the impact our dad made as a teacher on young people. It really just our love for sports, and our love for being involved in the game. And we both fell in love with lacrosse. So we knew we wanted to be involved at some level.
Did it occur to you at the time that being either a professional lacrosse player or a professional coach of some sort, that it's hard to pay the bills? Because in those days, it's gotten a little better in the last 10 years, but forging there's obviously plenty of people have forged careers as coaches in lacrosse, but tougher though in those days, and even farther back than that than it was now. That it was not a deterrent for you.
No, I wanted to do something where I loved what I was doing, and I just could never picture myself, like sitting behind a desk doing like an accounting job or, something like that. I'd be miserable. So, I wanted to do something I loved and felt like if I worked hard enough that the reward would come, later on down the road. I waited tables at a restaurant as a volunteer at Ohio State to make ends meet my first year there. And I think I made, $25,000 a year my first year at Cornell. So yeah, no, it's not a profession where you're going to get rich, and just got to put in your time and work your way up.
Up and down High Street.
Yes, sir.
There's used to be a place there called the Flame. It was kind of an outdoor bar, if I remember right.
Okay.
Somewhere on it was like
I don't know if I remember the Flame. I had a couple of spots. The Outer Inn. There was a couple of Permani Brothers. There was some really good ones.
There was an outside like patio that had a I want to say not a flame, but it had a barbecue kind
Fire
of
pit.
thing. Fire pit. There we go. There's a name for it. My brain had come around to it. What position did you play at Ohio State?
I came in as an attackman. I played midfield all 4 years.
Speedy?
I'm not sure that speed was definitely my game. I actually enjoyed playing at both ends of the field. I definitely was a shooter for sure. But I liked the defensive aspect of the game too, and being able to push transition and take face-off wings. I loved it.
Did you also play midfield?
I did, yeah. And that was fun.
One question I've always asked, and we had a chance to talk to all the PLL Hall of Fame guys last year. We talked to a bunch of them, and my question to them was, do you feel like a professional athlete when you're making less than the videographer for the Ohio State football team?
Yeah, you're not doing it for the money, that's for sure. You're doing it for the love of the game. Having that experience was incredibly special. And they treated us like pro athletes, even though we weren't necessarily getting paid like it. But I had the opportunity to play with some of the best players that's ever played this game, like childhood heroes. I know you mentioned that you just spoke to Casey Powell, and sometimes people have asked me who's the best player you ever had the opportunity to play with. Well, I played with both Casey and Mike because I was in Rochester with Casey in my first year, who drafted me, and then I got traded to Boston and played with Mike. But and they're both incredible. But Casey Powell, best lacrosse player I've ever been on a field with.
Yeah, he was watching him play. When we talked to Mark Millen and Jesse Hubbard and a bunch of the guys that had made it last year, it was kind of interesting talking to them because they had come from what was then club teams into the MLL when the MLL first developed.
Right.
And some of those club games, if you went back to probably 1998, 99, there was some unbelievable games played in the New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore area. And it was like, it's sort of like it wasn't all-star softball, but it wasn't organized like the MLL was.
Right.
So it was kind of interesting. So you started coaching. Your first coaching job was an assistant, if I'm not mistaken, at Ohio State.
Yep. I was a volunteer there for 1 year.
Do volunteers do exactly what we think? They coach for free?
More or less. You might make, a few $1,000 working camps, that type of thing, but it's minimal. And if you really want to be a coach, you treat it like you're a full-time paid coach. You're in the office early, you're the first one there, you're the last one to leave. And so you just got to figure out a way to make ends meet. And if you treat it that way, it'll lead to success.
I think of the great story about Tom Izzo living in Jed Heathcote's basement for 7 years.
Yeah.
Because he literally did not make enough money to fold an old car and live on a cot in his basement. And when he finally got the first assistant's job, he had enough money to go out and rent a $300 a month apartment. There's a lot of stories like that in this world of sports.
Absolutely. I mean, most people that head coaches across the landscape started as volunteers somewhere, and worked their way up. So, I think this era of kind of instant gratification of like, hey, I want to be a full-time guy, I want to be an offensive coordinator, I want to run a side of the ball. And it's like, you got to learn the game and you got to learn how to like work and how to be an assistant coach.
From there to first opportunity of actually somebody paying you to coach, Cornell.
Yeah, Jeff Tambroni, incredible mentor, incredible friend. That was like a 101 in like how to run an incredibly professional program, one of the most elite programs in the country at the time. And so that year I learned so much. It was so eye-opening. Ben DeLuca was the other assistant. And so, yeah, now, that year came to an end. We lost in the playoffs to Duke in the quarterfinals, that great Zach Greer, Matt Danowski team. And, was offered the opportunity to go to Bucknell at age 20, whatever I was, 24, to be, an offensive coordinator and first assistant there. And I tell you what, Greg, you look back and you're like, man, I didn't know what I didn't know. You know what I mean? You thought you knew it. You thought you knew it all. But man, definitely didn't.
Before you got to Bucknell, you had to stop though with Joe Brescia, did you not? At NC State or at North Carolina?
No, I went to North Carolina after Bucknell.
Okay. All right.
So I went Bucknell for 3 years, and then when Nick got the Ohio State coaching job, Brescia left to go to Carolina. Nick got the Ohio State coaching job, and I went to Carolina with Coach.
So Sambroni and Brescia are sort of the first couple of guys leading you into the professional career that you have now. I can't think of two better mentors.
Yeah, great people. And Frank Federica at Bucknell as well. I mean, just tremendous. And the cool thing, Greg, is that like when you work for different guys, like they all have different styles and different leadership ways of going about it, and you can take the best of what they do, but while trying to keep it, authentic to yourself. And they just taught me so much about how to have high character and run a program the right way and not cut corners. And then had the fortune of working for Mike Murphy at Penn as well. So I've had some incredible mentors.
It takes, I believe, for a head coach to learn his craft 10 years. And I don't know if it's 10,000 hours, but I think it takes some time. When did you feel comfortable enough that it was your voice? When did that really start to settle?
As a head coach
as a head coach. As a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny you say it takes you 10 years. It like I'm in year 5, and I obviously learning a lot every day. And you get more and more comfortable. You learn every year a little bit more about how to push the right buttons. And I think especially when you're building a program like we are at Lafayette, in terms of what adjustments to make, and how to handle certain situations. And I think every year I get better at that. And you know, I'm 41 years old and I got a long way to go in terms of learning as a head coach, but that's what I love about my job is that you're constantly growing and learning. So to answer your question, I mean, obviously I had the confidence to come in as a head coach and take over this program, but at the same time, in the last 4.5 years, I feel like I've grown tremendously as a leader, and I hope to continue to do so.
Finding your voice and knowing what you want to do when others around you may not necessarily agree is finding that strength of character that you know that you're going down a road. And you're always second guess yourself as a coach. I don't think that's any secret. But when you feel comfortable enough to know you can pull the the boat up the hill by yourself because you've had that experience, and those people will follow. That's, to me, that was always sort of the litmus test to know when it was when you weren't looking over your shoulder. I think that's
That's a
something.
great point. I mean, I think you got to have the courage of your of your convictions. That was something that Jeff Tambroni always used to say, you know, you got to be convicted, you know, and how you feel and what you want to do while listening to others and taking that feedback, right? You got to still listen and obviously you want everybody's opinion, but at the same time, like it is your program and you have to make decisions that
Right.
are going to affect wins and losses.
I only asked that question because you're 5 years into being that head coach, and we got guys on my staff in the high school side. They're 22. They just played college, and they can't understand why they can't run the entire program by themselves.
Yep.
When it comes to that experience, it like any job, it just takes time to learn the process, and it's just something that you got to be comfortable with.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I couldn't agree more.
What are you coaching? Are you coaching offense or defense at Lafayette?
Try to do a little bit of everything, but you know, definitely lean more towards the offensive side of the ball. We have great assistants here. Eric Adamson came over from Denver, won a national championship at Denver in 2015, and he coaches our offense. Judd Hall coaches our D. He's an Ohio guy, up Arlington. So I like to like coach culture, you know, as a head coach, and I like to have my hands in a little bit of everything. Is really my preference.
Okay. What would we, if we watched? I haven't had a chance to see Lafayette play. What would we notice about the way you play?
I think definitely a disciplined team that likes to push and transition. You know, we play guys at defensive midfield that can handle the ball and score. And you know, so they can play at kind of more than one speed. We can play in the box and we can also push. And is a team that plays really, you know, I would say fast but smart. That's kind of like our mantra.
Talk a little bit about Lafayette as a college, what academically.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful school. About 3,000 kids, liberal arts, but top 20 engineering program as well. You know, and I think that's what makes it unique is that, you know, you can be an econ major or you could be a mechanical engineer, or you can be, you know, a government and law major. So it's an incredible education, one of the best in the country. We play in Fisher Stadium, which is a beautiful, beautiful venue. Yeah, I think that we have location from that standpoint. We're an hour from Philly, New York City, right in the heart here of all of it. So I think it's a great place to be, and it's a school that's putting a ton of resources into athletics and wants to win at men's lacrosse. So it's a great time to be here.
The smaller schools, and I say it strictly in terms of enrollment, can play in football stadiums because they're not the size of the shoe or maybe U of
Like
L.
15,000 seats. You're not talking, you know,
Right.
100.
The advent of opening Ohio State's new facility, which is one of the best in the country, being able to get a hot dog and still see through the fence and see the game going on. Nick obviously pulled off a great deal, but most of the teams now in the Big Ten and a lot of the ACC teams are getting their own stadiums. Sort of, is that an identifier to you, or do you think that that's something that's where the sport is headed, to sort of have their own homes?
I think it's where it's headed, Greg. I really do. And that's our plan here. We're going to build a $13 million lacrosse facility, and we're plan is to build our own stadium as well. And I think if you want to be, you know, committed to men's lacrosse, I think building your own home where you can create your own environment and an experience and show your recruits and your student athletes that, you know, this is your home. I think that is the trend that it's headed in.
I have a standard question that's sort of a thread through a number of interviews, and I'll ask it of you before I get into the U.S. program that you were involved with for USA Lacrosse, and that is, given the opportunity in recruiting, physicality, IQ, which direction do you go?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think we're always, oof, um,
It's harder than it seems, doesn't it?
yeah. I mean, I think athleticism for us, like if those kids that slip through the cracks, maybe at like an ACC or a Big Ten, we feel like we can help them become better lacrosse players, but it's really hard to teach the athletic, traits of size, speed, physicality, as you mentioned. So probably err on the side of that. And the lacrosse IQ piece, you're banking on your ability to be able to coach them up.
Lafayette academically is up there at the top of the ladder. Do you get a problem with maybe kids that can't get in academically? Do you have that Ivy League problem?
Here and there, we don't certainly have the ability to get anybody in. It's a tough school. So, but at the same time, I do think with athletic scholarships, we have a little bit more flexibility than maybe the Ivies do. So that gives us a little bit, of an advantage there, in that sense. So kind of the best of both worlds. But I think we attract the right kind of kids to come to school here.
Patrick, you had a chance to pull on the, national colors for, for U19 and U21s, coaching at that level, coaching and representing your country. Again, I don't get a chance to ask this question very often, but what kind of experience was that for you?
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I feel so blessed and fortunate. Obviously in 16, we were able to go over to Vancouver and win gold. And then, this one with COVID and having it delayed was probably that much more special, and being able to go over to Ireland, and I brought my daughter with me. It was really, really cool, to say the least, and being around guys like Brendan O'Neill and Pat Cavanaugh and Alex Slusher and the whole group, Graham Bundy. I mean, just such an incredible group of coaches, players and staff, memory and experience that it shapes you and changes you, no doubt, in all kinds of positive ways.
Is there more understanding of coaching with Nick at that level in your late 30s, early 40s? Is there more appreciation for it than it maybe when you were 20?
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's extra special to be with Nick. I think we definitely have kind of that ability to know what each other's thinking, and be able to, and like speed is important when you're coaching in a short period of time, like winning gold, and you only have X amount of time to prepare. To be able to know each other and trust each other is beyond important. So that was really special for us to be able to do that together. And obviously coming out on top was incredible.
Opportunity sometimes gets lost on the young.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good saying for sure.
I think there's a certain amount of that. And if, like you say, you take your daughter and there's an uncle, there's the dad, you have a chance to experience that she's never going to, forget for the rest of her life. So,
totally.
I think that's something that's pretty important. What kind of kid do you look for when you're recruiting, and how big? Again, I mentioned that you had a couple guys from Texas, but if essentially you're in the middle of hotbed of USA as far as lacrosse goes, you're not that far from Long Island, you're not that far from Baltimore.
Right.
You're right. Philly is right there. Are you lucky enough to be in that position? You don't have to necessarily look, or are you headed like a lot of teams headed to national rosters?
We are in a hotbed. So like I said before, we're in the middle of Baltimore's 2 hours away. Like we can get everywhere. And I think because of our location and because I think people are starting to understand that our program is on the rise, like we're getting more interest level in terms of kids coming to us saying, I'm really interested in Lafayette. So we have a national recruiting approach. We have kids on our roster from Texas, as you mentioned, California. We've got a few Canadians now, which is exciting. So, I fly to British Columbia, I go to Toronto. New England's been a big one for us, Connecticut, Massachusetts. So we go all over. I think this is a place where, our kids work really hard in the classroom and on the field. So we've got to find the right character kids that, are gonna, we big on extra work, Greg, like coming down between classes and getting shots and, doing film, and just, you got to put in the extra work. But it also takes the right kind of kid that wants to do that and isn't just like, they're done at the end of the day. It's like school, okay, practice, but then they're also looking to do more. And so I think finding really, really hungry kids that maybe got overlooked by some other people is kind of like our niche.
Is Lafayette a stepping stone? Or are you happy where you are?
Well, I just signed a 4-year contract extension. So my family's incredibly happy here. Lauren and the girls, we moved from Philly. I commuted my first year here. Lauren had a great teaching job that she gave up to come here. And we're just so happy. We got the mountains 30 minutes away. We feel like we're close to everything. And I feel like I'm truly living the dream. I have an athletic director here and a president that is incredibly supportive. And we have incredible kids and student athletes. So You know, it would take a special opportunity for me, because we're very, very happy here.
In a league that can provide teams that can play at the national championship level. I think that's also
Exactly.
that's
Exactly. And that's
important.
what we're trying to do, is build a program that is competitive in the Patriot League. And so by doing so, you're building a nationally competitive program, and that's the goal.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the time spent with you, and hopefully they'll a couple of guys from Michigan will look your way. There's some good players coming out of here.
Would love to get a guy from Michigan, Greg. I'm really grateful for you having me on. I think what you guys are doing is great, and it's a tremendous, thing that you guys are doing here. So really blessed, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Pat.